We'll continue. Changing his imagined self from form to form, he regards the icon growing by his gaze, and in the worm foresees the coming God. At last, the traveler in the paths of time arrives on the frontiers of eternity. In the transient symbol of humanity draped, he feels his substance of undying self and loses his kinship to mortality. A beam of the eternal smites his heart. His thought stretches into infinitude. All in him turns to spirit, vastness. Rakito, come here. His soul breaks out to join the oversoul. His life is oceaned by that superlife. He has drunk from the breast of the mother of the worlds. A topless supernature fills his frame. She adopts his spirit's everlasting ground as the security of her changing world and shapes the figure of her unborn mites. Immortality, she conceives herself in him. In the creature, the unveiled creatrix works. Her face is seen through his face, her eyes through his eyes. Her being is his through a vast identity. Then is revealed a man, the overt divine. A static oneness and dynamic power descend in him, the integral Godhead's seals. His soul and body take that splendid stamp. A long dim preparation is man's life, a circle of toil and hope and war and peace, tracked out by life on matter's obscure ground. In his climb to a peak no feet have ever trod, he seeks through a penumbra shot with flame, a veiled reality half known, ever missed, a search for something or someone never found, cult of an ideal never made real here, an endless spiral of ascent and fall until at last is reached the giant point through which his glory shines for whom we were made. And we break unto the affinity of God. Across our nature's border line we escape into supernature's arc of living light. This now was witnessed in that son of force. In him that high transition laid its base, original and supernal immanence, of which all nature's process is the art. The cosmic worker set his secret hand. Excuse me. To turn this frail mud engine to heaven use. A presence wrought behind the ambiguous screen. It beat his soil to bear a titan's weight. Refining half-hewn blocks of natural strength. It built his soul into a statued god. The craftsman of the magic stuff of self. Look my belly. Belly. Oh. Sweetest puppy dog in the whole world. Refining half-hewn blocks of natural strength that built his soul into a statued god. The craftsman of the magic stuff of self who labors at his high and difficult plan in the wide workshop of the wonderful world, modeled in inward time his rhythmic parts, then came the abrupt transcendent miracle, the masked immaculate grandeur could outline, At travail in the occult womb of life, his dreamed magnificence of things to be, a crown of the architecture of the worlds, a mystery of married earth and heaven. Oof. Annex divinity to the mortal scheme. A seer was born, a shining guest of time. For him, mind's limiting firmament ceased above. In the griffin forefront of the night and day, a gap was rent in the all concealing vault. The conscious ends of being went rolling back. The landmark of the little person fell. The island ego joined its continent. Overpassed was this world of rigid, limiting forms. Life's barriers opened into the unknown. Abolished were conception's covenants, and, striking off subjection's rigorous clause, annulled the soul's treaty with nature's nescience. All the great inhibitions were torn off, and broken the intellect's hard and lustrous lid. Truth unapportioned found immense sky room, and Iprian vision saw and knew. The bound mind became a boundless light, the finite self matted with infinity. His march now soared into an eagle's flight, out of apprenticeship to ignorance. Wisdom upraised him to her mastercraft and made him an archmason of the soul, a builder of the immortal secret house, an aspirant to supernal timelessness. Freedom and empire called to him from on high. Above mind's twilight and life's star-led night, there gleamed the dawn of a spiritual day. And so he grew into his larger self. Humanity framed his movements less and less. A greater being saw a greater world. Oh, excuse me. A fearless will for knowledge dared to erase. The lines of safety reason draws that bar. Minds soar, souls dive into the infinite. Even his first steps broke out our small earth bounds and loitered in a vaster free air. In hands sustained by transfiguring might, he caught up lightly like a giant's bow. Left slumbering in a sealed and secret cave, the powers that sleep unused in man within, he made of miracle a normal act, and turned to a common part of divine works, magnificently natural at this height, efforts that would shatter the strength of mortal hearts, pursued in a royalty of mighty ease, aims too sublime for nature's daily will, the gifts of the Spirit crowding came to him. They were his life's pattern and his privilege. A pure perception lent its lucent joy. Its intimate visions waited not to think. It enveloped all nature in a single glance. It looked into the very self of things. Deceived no more by form, he saw the soul. It begins. It knew what lurked to them unknown. It seized the idea in mind, the wish in the heart. It plucked out from gray folds of secrecy the motives which from their own sight men hide. He felt beating life in other men, invade him with their happiness and their grief, their love, their anger, their unspoken hopes, entered in currents or in pouring waves into the immobile ocean of his calm. He heard the inspired sound of his own thoughts, re echoed in the vault of other minds. The world's thought streams traveled into his ken. His inner self grew nearer to others' selves and bore a kinship's weight, a common tie. And stood untouched, king To itself alone, a magical accord quickened and attuned to ethereal symphonies, the old earthly strings, it raised the civitors of mind and life to be happy partners in the soul's response. Tissue and nerve were turned to sensitive chords, records of luster and ecstasy. It made the body's means the spirit's acolytes, a heavenlier function with a finer mode, lit with its grace man's outward earthliness, the soul's experience of its deeper sheaths, no more slept drugged by matter's dominance, in the dead wall, closing us from wider self. Into a secrecy of apparent sleep, the mystic tracked beyond our waking thoughts, a door parted, built in by matter's force, releasing things unseized by earth's sense, a world unseen, unknown by outward mind, appeared in the silent spaces of the soul. He sat in secret chambers looking out into the luminous countries of the unborn, where all things dreamed by the mind are seen and true, and all that the life longs for is drawn close. He saw the perfect in their starry homes, wearing the glory of a deathless form, lain in the arms of the eternal's peace, wrapped in the heartbeats of God's ecstasy, of God ecstasy. He lived in the mystic space where thought is born and will is nursed by an ethereal power, and fed on the white milk of the eternal strengths, till it grows into the likeness of a God. In the witnesses' occult rooms with mind-built walls, on hidden interiors lurking passages, open the windows of the inner sight. He owned the house of undivided time. Lifting the heavy curtain of the flesh, he stood upon a threshold, serpent watched, and peered into gleaming endless corridors, silent and listening in the silent heart. For the coming of the new and the unknown, he gazed across the empty stillness and heard the footsteps of the undreamed idea in the far off adventures. Oh, you good, piggy. I'm not going to girl. In the far off adventures of the beyond, he heard the secret voice, the word that knows, and saw the secret face that is our own. The inner planes uncovered their crystal doors. Strange powers and influences touched his life. A vision came of higher realms than ours, a consciousness of brighter fields and skies. Whew. This is like word for word my third death experience, where I met Sri Aurobindo. Phew. Mind blowing. But back to our previously scheduled program. In Never Ready to Die, Notorious Big was full of shit, a fat demon, spitting lies. Sri Aurobindo is full of life, and he only tells you how to rise. Immortality is the way. Fuck Biggie Smalls. There's no time to play. I say fuck him and I mean it sincere. Fuck him in his big mouth and fuck him in his two fat ears. All he did was bring us down and make us hate. So, I read to you Sri Aurobindo's Savitri, so we can lighten up our souls, be blissful and elate before it's too late. I don't know where I was, but anyways. Objects too fine for our more material grasp, acts vibrant with a superhuman light, and movements pushed by a superconscient force, and joys that never flowed through mortal limbs, and lovelier scenes than earth's happier lives, a consciousness of beauty and of bliss. Stop that, leave that pussy alone. A knowledge which became what it perceived, replaced the separate sense and the heart, and drew all nature into its embrace. The mind leaned out to meet the hidden worlds, Air glowed and teemed with marvelous shapes and hues. In the nostrils quivered celestial fragrances. On the tongue lingered the honey of paradise, a channel of universal harmony. Hearing was a stream of magical audience, a bed for occult sounds earth cannot hear, like when you hit that DMT three times real hard and you get that high pitch in your ears before you see things. Anyways, out of a covert tract of slumber self, or when you hear the song of the spheres. The voice came of a truth submerged, unknown, that flows beneath the cosmic surfaces. Only mid and omniscient silence heard, held by intuitive heart. Sorry, I got to load another dab. A little bong rip real quick. Held by intuitive heart. What you doing, Piggy Deedles? That's my girly girl. Ba-doom. Held by intuitive heart and secret sense. It caught the burden of secrecy sealed and dumb. It voiced the unfulfilled demand of earth. Oh. And the song of promise of unrealized heavens, and all that hides in the omnipotent sleep, in the unceasing drama carried by time on its long listening flood that bears the worlds, insoluble doubt on a pilgrimage without goal, a laughter of sleeplessness, or no, a laughter of sleepless pleasure foamed and spumed, and murmurings of desire that cannot die. A cry came of the world's delight to be, the grandeur and greatness of its will to live. Oh, yeah. Recall of the soul's adventure into space, a traveler through the magic centuries, and beings labor in matter's universe, in search for the mystic meaning of its birth, in joy of high spiritual response, its throb of satisfaction and content, in all the sweetness of the gifts of life, its large breath and pulse, and thrill of hopes and fear, its taste of pangs and tears of ecstasy, its rapture's poignant beat of sudden bliss, the sob of its passion and unending pain, the murmur and whisper of the unheard sounds which crowd around our hearts but find no window to enter, swelled into a canticle of all that suffers to be still unknown, and all that labors vainly to be born, and all the sweetness none will ever taste, and all the beauty that will never be, inaudible to our deaf mortal ears, the wide world rhythms wove their stupendous chant, to which life strives to fit our rhyme beats here, melting our limits in the illimitable, tuning the infinite to infinity, or tuning the finite to infinity. A low muttering rose from the subconscious caves, the stammering of the primal ignorance. Answer to that inarticulate questioning. There stooped with lightning neck and thunder's wings, a radiant hymn to the inexpressible, and the anthem to the superconscient light. All was revealed, there none can here express. Visions and dream were fables spoken by truth, or symbols were veridical than facts, or symbols more veridical than facts. Or were truths enforced by supernatural seals? Most likely. Bullshit. Truths are bullshit enforced by supernatural seals, but that's just my opinion, y'all. Critical thinking. Scratch beneath the surface. Thank you, Jism and Hism. Immortal eyes approached and looked on his, and being of many kingdoms neared and spoke, and beings of many kingdoms neared and spoke. The ever-living whom we name as dead could leave their glory beyond death and birth, to utter the wisdom which exceeds all phrase. The kings of evil and the kings of good, appellants at the reason's judgment seat, proclaim the gospel of their opposites, and all believe themselves spokesmen of God. The gods of light and titans of the dark battled for his soul as for a costly prize, and every hour loosed from the quiver of time. There rose a song of new discovery, a bow twang. Hey, I gotta go back to line 3, twin. I gotta thank family, mainly my main ninja, Gus D, light warrior for many lives, and my father, Charles Red Eyes, Charlie Good Time Red Eye Hart, Charles Joseph Hart, my papa. When I was out of body, up in this place that this is talking about right now, I could hear my father praying for me by my bed, as well as my buddy Gustavo, straight chewing out the pulmonologist. He doesn't have a doctorate. His father's anesthesiologist, and he's smarter than every surgeon and doctor in that hospital. But I could hear him from up on high, out of my body, chewing out the pulmonologist, fighting for me, telling him to take me off the respirator. It's been 11 days. This is not acceptable. They need to let me breathe. I heard my dad praying for me daily by my side. That being said, I was given a choice, and I made the choice to come back and finish what was started. Blast love and light, Care Bear stare everything in sight, change anger to might, weakness to strength, addiction to non-addiction. I don't know. You know what I mean. You know what I'm getting at. I'm here spitting that. Facts. Sri Aurobindo. The Book of Beginnings, Canto 3, the Yoga of the Soul's Release, and I continue. Or were truths enforced by supernatural seals, immortal eyes approached and looked in his, and beings of many kingdoms neared and spoke. The ever-living whom we name as dead could leave their glory beyond death and birth, to utter the wisdom which exceeds all phrase. The kings of evil and the kings of good, appellants at the reason's judgment seat, proclaim the gospel of their opposites, and all believe themselves spokesmen of God. The gods of light and titans of the dark battled for his soul as for a costly prize. In every hour loosed from the quiver of time, there rose a song of new discovery, a bow twang's hum of young experiment. Each day was a spiritual romance, as if he was born into a bright new world. Adventure leaped an unexpected friend, and danger brought a keen, sweet tang of joy. Each happening was a deep experience. There were high encounters, epic colloquies, and councils came couched in celestial speech. And honeyed pleadings breathed from occult lips to help the heart to yield to rapture's call. And sweet temptations stole from beauty's realms, and sudden ecstasies from a world of bliss. It was a region of wonder and delight. And now his bright clairaudience could receive, a contact thrilled of mighty unknown things, awakened to new unearthly closenesses. The touch replied to subtle infinities, and with a silver cry of opening gates, sight's lightnings leaped into the invisible. Ever his consciousness and vision grew. They took an ampler sweep, a loftier flight. He passed the border marked for matter's rule, and passed the zone where thought replaces life. Ooh. Out of this world of sight, suddenly he came into a silent self where world was not, and looked beyond into a nameless vast. These symbol figures lost their right to live. All tokens dropped our sense can recognize. There the heart beat no more at body's touch. There the eyes gazed no more on beauty's shape. In rare and lucient intervals of hush, into a signless region he could soar, packed with the deep contents of a formlessness, where world was into a single being wrapped, and all was known by the light of identity, and spirit was its own self-evidence. The supreme gaze looked out through human eyes, and saw all things and creatures as itself, and knew all things and word as its own voice. Their unity is too close for search and clasp. Healing, love, and light are all one. And love is a yearning from the one for the one, and beauty is a sweet difference of the same, and oneness is the soul of of multitude. There all the truths unite in a single truth, and all ideas rejoin reality. There knowing herself by her own termless self, wisdom supernal, wordless, absolute, set uncompanioned in the eternal calm, all seeing, motionless, sovereign and alone. Their knowledge needs not words to embody idea. Idea seeking a house in boundlessness, weary of its homeless immortality. Ask not in thoughts carved brilliant cells to rest, whose single windows clipped out look on things. Sees only a little arc of God's vast sky, the boundless with the boundless their consorts. While there one can be wider than the world, while there one is one's own infinity. His center was no more an earthly mind. A power of seeing silence filled his limbs, caught by a voiceless white epiphany, into a vision that surpasses forms, into a living that surpasses life. He neared the still consciousness, that still white magnetic light that I talk about. He neared the still consciousness sustaining all. The voice that only by speech can move the mind became a silent knowledge in the soul. The strength that only in action feels its truth was lodged now in a mute omnipotent peace, a leisure in the labor of the worlds, a pause in the joy and anguish of the search, restored the stress of nature to God's calm. A vast unanimity ended life's debate. The war of thoughts that fathers the universe, the clash of forces struggling to prevail, in the tremendous shock that lights a star, as in the building of a grain of dust. The grooves that turn their dumb eclipse in space, plowed by the seeking of the world's desire, the long regurgitations of time's flood, the torment edging the dire force of lust, the wakes kinetic in earth's dullard slime, and carves a personality out of mud, the sorrow by which nature's hunger is fed, the oysteress which creates the fire of pain, the fate that punishes virtue with defeat, the tragedy that destroys long happiness. The weeping of love, the quarrel of the gods, ceased in a truth which lives in its own light. His soul stood free, a witness and a king, absorbed no more in the moment ridden flux where mind incessantly drifts as a raft, hurried from phenomenon to phenomenon. He abode at rest in indivisible time. As if a story long written but acted now, in his present he held his future and his past, felt in the seconds of uncounted years, and saw the hours like dots on upon a page. An aspect of the unknown reality altered the meaning of the cosmic scene. This huge material universe became a small result of a stupendous force, overtaking the moment the eternal ray illumined that which never yet was made. Thought lay down in a mighty voicelessness. The toiling thinker widened and grew still. Wisdom, transcendent touch his quivering heart. His soul could sail beyond thought's luminous bar. Mind screened no more the shoreless infinite. Across a void, retreating sky he glimpsed. Through a last glimmer and drift of vanishing stars, the superconscient realms of motionless peace where judgment ceases and the world is mute. In the unconceived lies, pathless and alone, there came not form or any mounting voice. There only were silence and the absolute. Out of that stillness, mind newborn arose and woke to truths once inexpressible. And forms appeared dumbly significant, a seeing thought, a self revealing voice. He knew the source from which his spirit came. Movement was married to the immobile vast. He plunged his roots into the infinite. He based his life upon eternity. Only a while at first these heavenlier states, these large, wide, poised upliftings could endure. The high and luminous tension breaks too soon, the body's stone stillness and the life's hushed trance, the breathless might and the calm of silent mind, or slowly they fail and as set a golden day. The restless nether members tire of peace, a nostalgia of old little works and joys, a need to call back small familiar selves to tread the accustomed and inferior way. The need to rest in a natural pose of fall, as a child who learns to walk can walk not long, replace the titan will forever to climb. On the heart's altar, dim the sacred fire. An old pull of subconscious chords renews. It draws the unwilling spirit from the heights, or a dull gravitation drags us down to the blind, driven inertia of our base. This too the supreme diplomat can use. He makes our fall a means for greater rise. For into ignorant nature's gusty field, into the half-ordered chaos of mortal life, the formless power, the self of eternal light, follow in the shadow of the Spirit's descent. The twin duality, forever one, chooses its home mid the tumults of sense. He comes unseen into our darker parts, and curtained by the darkness does his work. A subtle and all-knowing guest and guide, till they too feel the need and will to change. All here must learn to obey a higher law. Our body's cells must hold the immortal's flame, else would the spirit reach alone its source, leaving a half-saved world to its dubious fate. Excuse me. Nature would ever labor unredeemed. Our earth would ever spin unhelped in space, and this immense creation's purpose fail, till at last the frustrate universe sank undone. Even his godlike strength to rise must fall. His greater consciousness withdrew behind, dim and eclipsed. His human outside strove to feel again the old sublimities. Bring the high saving touch, the ethereal flame, call back to its dire need the divine force. Always the power poured back like sudden rain, or slow in his breast a presence grew. It clambered back to some remembered height, or soared above the peak from which it fell. Each time he rose, there was a larger poise, a dwelling on a higher spirit plane. The light remained in him a longer space. In this oscillation between earth and heaven, in this ineffable communion's climb, there grew in him, as grows a waxing moon, the glory of the integer of his soul, a union of the real with the unique, a gaze of the alone from every face, the presence of the eternal in the hours, widening the mortal's mind, half looking on things, bridging the gap between man's force and fate. Made whole the fragments being, we are here. At last was won a firm spiritual poise, a constant lodging in the eternal's realm, a safety in the silence and the ray, a settlement in the